Even with all of the safety and security risks of nuclear power, we have to consider the argument that we should be even more frightened of global warming.
The main thing right now that's driving a decision to maintain a nuclear power option are the risks concerning climate change. And part of the reason that I find myself working in nuclear power and feeling really good about it, it's not because I love nuclear technology. I think that it's interesting, and I think that there are a lot of risks, and I think that we haven't fully and adequately solved the problem of what we'll do with the waste yet. But I do think that I'm much more concerned about climate change, and I think the potential consequences of climate change and the risks and the chances of things being very catastrophic and happening rapidly are extraordinarily scary, and more so than the risks associated with nuclear power.
While most environmentalists remain opposed to nuclear power, there have been a few high-profile exceptions, such as Patrick Moore, one of the founders of Greenpeace, and now a lobbyist for the nuclear industry.
There's been this perfect storm of the environmental movement of worrying about global warming and greenhouse gas emissions coming together with the nuclear engineering industry, really. You go to this conference with about 10,000 nuclear engineers. They're in this huge conference hall, and then up comes Patrick Moore, and he goes through his slideshow, and we're just shocked because we see this guy with the hippie long hair, and he says, I started Greenpeace. We were all about saving the environment, and I have no idea why, but growing up in the nuclear industry, it's always been those hippies are out to get us, and now it seems like, all right, well, maybe this global warming thing really isn't a joke. Maybe this is for real, and hey, we actually have something to offer.
But our choice is not just between nuclear power and global warming, if there is another option.
The biggest problem for all of us, for all of humanity, is that we need to address the increasing temperature of our Earth's atmosphere immediately. We don't have time for anything but the most efficient mitigation strategy. If we go with the nuclear option for carbon mitigation, we're wasting capital and we're wasting time, because energy efficiency and renewables are 7 times more efficient per dollar spent than nuclear. And they can be installed much more quickly.
One of the key questions is whether or not energy efficiency and renewable energy sources, such as wind and solar power, can affordably replace both fossil fuels and nuclear power. The answer depends on who you ask.
There are ways in which we can reduce our carbon emissions, and there are various things that can contribute. And efficiency, of course, will be and has to be a very strong contributor, and so will expansion of renewables. But there's a section that people generally assign to nuclear power. And I think eliminating that wedge and replacing it with renewable technologies would be extraordinarily difficult, because there are, of course, certain constraints just on the market and how fast you can grow various technologies. And ultimately, cost is going to be a big issue. People, of course, especially right now, are extraordinarily squeamish about high electricity costs because they're paying so much at gas pumps. But you also see electricity generation in the home. Everyone's electricity bills are going up, and they'll continue to go up even if we do build new nuclear power plants. But right now, solar power and wind power and various other things are more expensive.
I met Arjun just a few years ago myself, but his reputation is enormous. He has written a book on the roadmap toward true sustainability. Without further ado, I think we should just let him speak for himself. Dr. Makajani.
So in 37 years, I have never said until now that renewables and efficiency can solve this problem. And I changed my mind when I did this study. I'm really not speaking as an environmentalist first. I did this book as an engineer. So it's an engineering analysis that says we can have a reliable system, the lights will come on, the cost will be reasonable, and we can achieve all these wonderful things, so why shouldn't we do it? There are plenty of low carbon sources of energy. We've got solar, we've got wind.
Arjun Makajani's plan is to start leveraging new technologies now, such as electric cars, energy-efficient buildings, and biomass power from aquatic plants. He says we can completely eliminate carbon dioxide emissions from the energy sector and stop using nuclear power within 30 to 50 years.
The millions of jobs we could create would be a very big collateral benefit. The main thing is the United States is very lucky to have a huge amount of renewable energy available. And it's very foolish not to tap it and use it to clean up the air and stop all these kids getting asthma from and not being able to, all of that. So this is the first bumper sticker from my book. Parking lots are the answer. So this is a U.S. Navy parking lot in San Diego. 750 kilowatts there. You can see you park in the shade. So you make your house very efficient and then marry it to solar energy. You can stretch those solar photovoltaic cells very, very far because you're not using very much electricity. That's 250 houses.
I would love to see a system in which we had local power generation and everyone kind of decided how they wanted their community to get their electricity. But realistically, it doesn't make sense to me with the strong economic forces that are involved. This is not the same as a country that has a government-run electricity industry. So you can't just put up a really expensive power plant for a community just because that community wants it. They'd have to pay for that power. And believe it or not, people aren't really interested in paying 5-10 times as much for electricity just because it's clean electricity. At the point of use, people don't know whether their light is coming from nuclear power or wind power or coal power. It all works the same. So they're not really that concerned about it. They don't see it directly.
The utility industry wants to be able to make a lot of money and keep a captured marketplace. And I believe that it's extremely threatening to that piece of corporate America that there happen to be these renewable sources of energy that simply don't require the kind of scale that corporate systems evolve to in order to operate at levels of efficiency. So you can put solar panels on your house. You can have a wind generator, and you can make your own electricity if you're willing to live, carefully.
We used to run the house just off the generator, and that was a pain in the neck because if the generator went down, you had no power at all. And then in the late 70s, I got a windmill, put a windmill tower up and put the windmill up. And then we went to the photovoltaic cells that we have on the south side of the house. And the photovoltaic cells take the sun and put the charge into batteries so that we have reserve power when the sun's not shining or at night. And that runs pumps and runs the lights and stereo and all that. So once I put the new windmill up, then we'll be able to run off the hybrid situation. We'll have both the wind and the sun, and we'll have more than enough.
In addition to his solar-powered beach house, Wedge Bramhall built another house in Plymouth where he lives with his family and grows vegetables, peaches, and sunflowers to sell at his country store.
Never use any chemicals, all organic. My father used to do that too when I was a kid.
Organic gardening will not solve the energy crisis by itself, but it does point toward the values of sustainability and self-sufficiency.
So good. The way to do it is to try to get each house, each individual house or each property, to do as much as they can to have photovoltaic cells. Hot water, solar should be on everybody's house, no matter if they're in Boston or Arizona. We're not doing our part, and here we are buying oil from Saudi Arabia, places that want to use all the money we're giving them to come back and get us, and it makes no sense at all.
Ultimately, everyone in this debate, whether or not they're in favor of nuclear power, wants a healthy environment. The distinction lies most in the social, political, and economic choices that we make to reach that goal. I'm excited about the possibilities for a new economic system if we turn towards renewable energy sources. On the other hand, nuclear power seems firmly rooted in the current reality of corporations controlling our energy future. The energy experts at M.I.T. argue that we need to keep nuclear power on the table as an option for mitigating climate risk because it's entrenched in the energy industry. But to me, this is an argument about why we need to change the whole economic model.
It takes decades to make major changes in the energy infrastructure. That's associated with the nature of the beast. It's a multi-trillion-dollar per year, highly capitalized commodity business, very, very tight supply chains, lots of regulation and politics, that is a prescription for a slow changing system. Well, if it takes decades to change the system, and we have to have a major change within decades, it's a very simple conclusion that we better start now and start hard. And to do that, that's why we need really all the options on the table for global, national, and regional choices to be made that best optimize the economics within the constraints of regulation and regulation to come, as in, for example, carbon emission pricing.
Carbon emission pricing is part of a new approach to environmental regulation, which relies on the logic of capitalism and makes corporations who produce carbon dioxide pay for their negative impact on the environment. It seems crazy to me to give the marketplace even more control over our society, but this type of regulation is becoming more likely, and if it is enacted, it will benefit the nuclear power industry.
There's a significant increase in cost that that utility companies that have fossil fuel generating stations will have to deal with, that are not currently entered into their economic calculation of generating electricity. And for coal facilities and natural gas facilities, this will dramatically increase the cost of generating electricity to the point where nuclear will be cheaper by not just a little bit, but by a lot.
But even with carbon emission pricing, you can argue that nuclear power is not economically viable. Running a nuclear plant is relatively cheap, but building new plants will cost enormous amounts of money, and so will decommissioning and cleaning up old plants.
My main reason for opposing nuclear technology are that it's very high cost, so we can get a bigger bang for the buck with wind energy today. You're producing plutonium and proliferation problems. It would take a long time. You're going to consume a lot of water, and we don't know how to solve the problem of waste. We've got a catastrophic accident risks. That's a whole set of headaches we don't need, because we have another way to solve this problem that doesn't involve any of those headaches. Why create a proliferation headache when you can build a wind turbine? And when you can build a wind turbine for 10 cents a kilowatt hour, why spend 15 cents to create a proliferation headache? That makes no economic sense, and it makes no security sense.
All these economic comparisons are so complex that I can't say for sure that wind power is cheaper than nuclear power. I'd like to believe it's true, and at least Arjun Makhijani acknowledges that no technological solution is perfect.
We need approaches to energy that are going to be thoughtful, even if we're doing wind and solar. So I particularly favor solar on parking lots and rooftops, because you're not taking new land. There is going to, so long as we're increasing our energy consumption, there are going to be environmental effects. You have to mine titanium, you have to create silicon, you have to mine germanium, you have to mine cadmium. What I'm saying is renewable energy used sensibly has consequences that are completely different order of magnitude than nuclear energy and coal. Much less, not zero.